be able to get it all the time. So just make guesses. It's a logical deduction.
First one? Yeah. Second one might be a crab. I think the gooey duck might be the third one. I know they have that shell and they have a lot. I think it might be the first one. Yeah, that are the flatworms. Fourth flatworm. The third is I think it might be the third one. I don't know. Okay,
The fourth one would be the second. The second. The second would be the first.
So equal the back and make up the line.
Or the first would be
Over there. Okay, are we kind of getting close? Okay, volunteers. Let's start with the one that I personally think is the easiest, but it might not be. Any idea what this one will be when they grow up?
The second one.
Is the second
the
one?
fourth one.
The second one?
The second one?
Yeah.
How many of you think that these two are linked? Show of hands. Okay. Those of you get 2 thumbs up. This is the baby, or the specific term is a villager larva of a gooey duck. So you might have heard of it. It's the largest clam that can dig themselves in the mud. Some of them can live up to 180 years old. It's very common in the Pacific Northwest. That's why I put it out. I used to work with it. So that's the baby. That's the adult. They look very different. Okay, another one. The one with googly eyes. Crab. Excellent. So that's the zoea of a crab. Okay, let's go to the 2 harder ones. Look at the one that kind of looks like a snow helmet. That's how I think about it.
It's the last one.
Say that again?
The last one.
The last one?
Yeah.
Anybody think that it is the last one? So that one goes all the way there. Any other guess?
No.
It's a 50-50 chance. Show of hand.
Starfish.
So let's do a show of hand. Top left corner, become a starfish. Show of hand. Okay. Top left corner, go to this flat thing that I'll explain what it is. Okay. Ladies, you are awesome. That's the correct answer. This is a palladium larva. Once again, it's a fancy name. This is a ribbon worm. So you do see it here on the Cape Cod or on the coast. They're found at sandy bottom. If you pick them up, you would think that they just look like a worm, and the difference is that it really looks like a ribbon. There's no segmentation. And what is super cool about this thing is that, so it looks like a snow helmet right now. This is the baby worm. So what would happen is when it grows old enough, the worm would pop out like a jack-in-the-box and then eat the rest of the body. Nothing goes to waste. So that's really cool. Last but not the least is this guy. So now, where does this guy grow up to be?
Starfish.
Starfish. So for those of you who have been paying attention, right, we cross off those 3, so that one will be the starfish. So here are all the answers. So the reason why I asked you to go through this exercise is trying to convey to you that planktonic larvae often look very, very different from the adult. And what it suggests is that they're very adapted to the way of life in the plankton. And I find it very intriguing that, well, they kind of all live in the same place. Why do they look so different? So that's how I got started. So I talked to you about a lot of animals cannot move far as an adult. They leave the larvae to be transported. Larvae are very intriguing looking. They have different morphology and interesting. So they are kind of good to study. And another reason why I make larvae important is that larval mortality rate is really high. What you're looking at here is age on the x-axis. On the y-axis is number of individuals. I've just modeled this based on how many eggs a sand dollar can reproduce in a year. They produce about 350,000 eggs per individual, which is a lot. You would think about if your mom has 350,000 offspring, it's a lot. But this is the catch. The mortality rate in the plankton is often estimated as an exponential decay. So if they're in the plankton for a short period of time, a lot of them don't make it at the end. So less than 10% of it make it after a 10-day duration. And double whammy is that if you extend the life that they're in the plankton longer, even less of them would make it. Therefore, any change in environmental condition, if the ocean get warmer, if it get more acidic, they may grow slower. And therefore, the final mortality rate may be even higher. So, I talked about from an ecological perspective why we care about larvae, and here is a real socio-economic reason. How many of you have oysters, bay scallop, mussels, or cherry stone in the last week or so? Hands up. Okay? Do you know where they come from? Bay scallop, Cape Cod, very popular, right? Do you know how they are found? Do you think people go out and just catch them? I heard the word farms. Perfect. So you're well aware that a lot of commercial shellfish are actually farmed. So they grow them from seed. I'm talking about the picture of the gooey duck that you saw. The one picture of that one little guy costs 25 cents. Imagine an individual produce millions of eggs, and I'm just talking about one gooey duck. So it's a huge business. So that's why we need to understand larvae. Here's an example of why we want to understand larvae in the environment. Here's a news clipping from the Seattle Times last June. It reads, Philippa Bay oyster sounds alarm start moving hatchery to Hawaii. So I did my PhD in Washington State. What happened there was that low pH water outwelled towards the coast. How many of you have heard of outwelling? Anybody? Yeah, Kim knows. So upwelling is a process is when the wind blows across the shawl because of this thing called Coriolis falls due to the earth spinning. The water pushes offshore, deeper water get affected upwards. The deeper water has been on the bottom of the ocean longer, so there's more CO2 respired onto it, so it's more acidic. And therefore, when they got washed up to shore, the oyster larvae in the farm started dying. So the hatchery owner were like, you know what, I'm just going to move the whole operation to Hawaii. There's no such thing like upwelling happening. So that's another reason why we care about larvae, is because there is real socio-economic value attached to it. I'm talking about jobs and I'm talking about money. So that's how I got interested in larvae. So as a scientist, my biggest two questions are, how does individual performance of larvae affect adult population dynamics? In simple layman terms, do individual matters? Or it's just you have to look at everybody as a whole? I would like to think everybody matters. And the second question is, how does changing climate conditions affect each and every one of them? And what does it mean? So let's just focus on the first question for a minute. Here, I'm going to give you a very operational definition of what I mean by performance. Performance could be simply matter of life and death. Do they survive? And it could also be in growth and development. So do they gain size? Do they put on weight? Do they develop all the parts when they're supposed to be? And that also means feeding and swimming and other behavior. So if you think of it from a human perspective, it's just like watching a child grow, right? Does it gain height? Does he or she put on weight? Do they learn how to feed themselves, etc., etc.? It's very similar if you like to put that mentality on. And the reason why linking behavior is particularly interesting is because a lot of larvae use the same structure for feeding and swimming. So you're looking at a baby snail swimming through the water column and then sinking. This is a high-speed video. It's captured at 2,000 frames per second. And I've slowed them way down for you so that you can actually see what it's doing. So I'm going to play it one more time. So you can see that they have this bunny ear looking thing. This is what we call a velum. They have hairs on it that we call cilia. They use the cilia to both capture food particle and to swim. So it's very interesting that there's these two things that I put together. But it's not too hard to envision, right? You use your hand to pick up your food and you use your hand to swim around. So those are what I mean by performance. And you may ask the question, Karen, this is crazy. You just talked about they are washed around, carried around by the current. So why do I care about the behavior? And why do I care about can they swim? Because they're so small, they get carried by the current anyways. And it happens that because the ocean or a lot of estuarine environment are vertically structured. For instance, in an estuary, here is showing Chesapeake Bay, the fresher water is on top because they're less dense. The salty water from the ocean comes in from the bottom. So that's why if you look at it vertically, there's a difference. Despite larvae swim very little, changes in vertical position can make a real difference. Here is an example. We are looking at two different kinds of oysters. The Atlantic oyster, which we usually eat here. The Asian oyster that they talk about what if we import them to become a new fisheries. The babies of these two oysters differ in one major way. The local oysters tend to associate themselves with fresher, less saline water and therefore swim towards the top. The Asian oyster likes more saline water and tends to associate themselves with the bottom, so they stay close to the bottom. Question?
I want to know, what are the definitions for the top two on the map, Villiger and Petty Valley Drip?
Oh, I will go into that in just a moment. Good question. So remember, those are the difference in the behavior. And now we're going to look at the map. So I'm going to start playing the actually movies. So I'm going to step them forward in time. The physics, that is the current that sloshed the thing back and forth, is identical on the left and the right. The only difference is this, okay? And the dots are going to change color. They're going to grow. So villagers, they're just being sloshed around. That's the name of the larval form. Paddy villager means that they have a foot, so they can stick down onto the ground. And if they found a good place that they can be in, they're green. If they don't find somewhere else, then they turn dead and they turn orange. So now you can see that they're being sloshed back and forth. And this is also a good time to tell some of you that if you're interested in math, this is how math and biology can integrate. Or for those of you who are afraid of math, like I used to be, math can be a good tool to answer science questions. So you just have to work with the right people. So on the left, you can see that once again, these are the larvae that likes to stay up on top with the fresh water. These are the ones that stay at the bottom that like saltier water. In just about 10 days, you can see how the distribution looks completely different in Chesapeake Bay. Oh, I apologize that I didn't quite orient you, right? North is on towards the top of the stream. These are all the tributaries that feed the river that feeds in the Chesapeake Bay, so it opens up to the ocean here. So any predictions of what is going to happen? Which side is going to have more dead larvae? Left or right?
Left.
Left? Yep. Yes. So the reason why I often show these series of animation is that just that difference in behavior can have a significant implication of where they will end up and how many of them actually make it. So I always like to think that this is really positive. Larvae are small, but just by moving in a different way, they can influence their fate, right? So that's how I like to think about it. I found that very inspiring, and so I hope I've convinced you that behavior matters at a population level. So individuals move differently, they end up in a different place, and therefore the population size changes.
So because of the change of environment,
Because
you
the
have
current
the
is
salty
different.
and then you have the fresh, and they're used to being in salty or fresh water, they can't change to like between.
Yes. So what he was trying to ask is that has anything to do with the fact that they respond to the environment? Yes, but here is a good segue. But the problem is, how do you find out whether they like salt water or they like fresh water? A lot of the times in the nature, it's extremely hard because they are really small. I'm talking about baby oysters that's on the size of 60 microns, so which is basically the size of a piece of dendrop. The other day I was showing my collaborator. So how do you actually study that? So one of the ways is to bring them into the laboratory and use video motion analysis to actually track everyone swimming. And this is some of the things I've done during my master's study. So it's actually really simple. So you have a computer, you have